I am here with Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Alexander, we have the UK Secretary of Defence, the Defence Secretary, Gavin Williamson, saying that he is ready to start, put hard power, start an offensive, maybe get a little aggressive. You'll find the right words. You're good at finding the right words against China and Russia. What is going on here? Has this guy lost his mind?
Well, that's a very good question because, I mean, this is utterly fantastic. And can I say, it is so fantastic what he's proposing that it's even been ridiculed here in Britain. I mean, he's talking now about Britain taking a hard power line against China and Russia. He's saying that Britain should assert itself more vigorously. He's talking about the need, I think, to ramp up the British armed forces so as to confront the Chinese and the Russians more effectively. I think this is delusional stuff. And I think everybody in Britain, apart, it seems, from Gavin Williamson, knows that it is delusional stuff. This comes after a record of Gavin Williamson some months ago saying that Russia should go away and shut up, which was also highly criticised here in Britain. Now, can I just say, I mean, you know, we're talking about absurd ideas. He's talking about sending Britain's aircraft carrier, the Queen Elizabeth II, which has just been built but is still not fully completed its trials, to the South China Sea to patrol against the Chinese and the Chinese Navy. Those of us who know James Bond novels, films rather, will know that there was one in the, I think, about 1990s or late 1990s or early 2000s where the British fleet was moving around the South China Sea. But I mean, this is James Bond fantasy stuff. I mean, the idea that the British can take on the mighty Chinese Navy or indeed the Russian military is just ridiculous. Nobody in Britain supports this. And I mean, it begs the question of what planet Gavin Williamson is on.
What would be the military logic for doing this? What would be the political logic? I mean, okay, you have the Secretary of Defense saying, I want to send an aircraft carrier to South China Sea. Is there a reason that justifies the UK doing such a thing?
Right, militarily, it is nonsense. I mean, there is no military logic doing it. I mean, the United States and China are two military superpowers. Britain is not. The United States has, I believe, 10 nuclear aircraft carriers. Britain has 2 conventionally powered, far less powerful carriers. They would add nothing of any significance to the US fleet, which is there. And I suspect that the US actually would not be entirely happy to see a British carrier floating around the Pacific, which would have to be protected by the US Navy, because the British don't lack the means to protect this carrier from the kind of attack that the Chinese military would launch. So it has no military logic at all. Does it have any political logic? Only, I think, in Gavin Williams' own mind. Possibly he thinks it will impress the Americans. Obviously it won't. Possibly he thinks it will impress the Chinese. They will be annoyed and irritated by it, but I'm absolutely certain they won't take it seriously. Will it improve Gavin Williams's political ratings in Britain? Well, perhaps. He's been posing a lot with statues of Churchill recently, so maybe he's trying, in light of the fact that Theresa May, our Prime Minister, British Prime Minister, is not going to be around for very long, to strike a pose which might go down well, he calculates, with some Conservative MPs and Conservative Party members who hanker for the days when Britain was a major power. But to be honest, I think this is so fantastic that it is more likely to earn him ridicule and lose him support than to gain it, even amongst those kind of constituencies.
Can you give us some insight as to who Gavin Williamson is? Is he the man? Is he a career politician? He's a Tory conservative, I imagine? Is he aligned with Theresa May? Does he get along with Theresa May? Who is this? Who is this guy for our viewers to understand a little bit about him?
Right. He is a conservative politician. He is a professional politician. He has had a background in business. He has no background whatsoever in military affairs. So he just doesn't. I mean, we're not talking about a military man or a soldier in any sense. What his relationship with Theresa May is, I'm not sure. But he is a loyal minister. He is not somebody who has been plotting against her or who is has a particularly big profile in the Brexit issues, which are the ones that are important to the British at the moment. So I wouldn't put much weight on him as an important political figure, but it is extraordinary that at this time, when Britain is leaving the European Union and needs to have a good foreign policy and a good and a rational defence policy, we have someone like Gavin Williamson talking nonsense in this way at a time when a post-Brexit Britain is going to need to make good economic connections and commercial connections with all sorts of countries, including first and foremost China, which the previous Conservative Prime Minister, David Cameron, and his Chancellor, George Osborne, went out of their way to make friends with. So, I mean, it seems totally counterproductive from every conceivable point of view.
All right, two final questions then. Could this be connected to Brexit, i.e. maybe it's a distraction away from, the 24/7 Brexit news? So they're throwing a little bit of a distraction here for the public. And could this be connected to the Huawei stuff that's going on with Canada and China, with the US and China, and really Huawei, Germany and China with Huawei? I mean, Huawei is taking quite a beating all around the globe at the hands of US. I don't know, are they sanctioning Huawei? They're telling countries not to work with Huawei or else they will sanction the companies. So, I mean,
I think it is sanctions. I think, as I said, we are moving steadily towards a sanctions situation. I don't think there's any doubt about this. But to answer your two questions, the answer is yes, I think, in both camps. I mean, Britain has felt very humiliated by the way in which Brexit has been mismanaged. And one of the expressions of that sense of humiliation is that we have seen under Theresa May a marked hardening of British positions, of British foreign policy against those two countries which the British like to imagine as their adversaries. One is Russia, especially Russia. We saw that with the Skripal affair. The other is China. And I think this is being done essentially in order to make the British feel more important and more better about themselves, to show to the world that, and to the British people themselves, that Britain is still a force, even if it isn't managing Brexit very well. My own view is that this is so far-fetched and so delusional, what Gavin Williamson is saying, that I think that it's actually going to work against that objective. It's going to undermine it. It's going to make people question whether policy is being handled in a sensible way, rather than rally them to any, to the flag and behind the government, despite the chaos of the Brexit negotiations. So that's one thing. The second thing is about Huawei. Of course it is, because, we need to understand that there's also been, and that the big story is not the bad relations that are starting to develop between Britain and China. It is the bad relations that are evolving between the United States and China. And the Huawei issue is central to all of this, with the British always and invariably, when it comes to the United States, being what the French call more royalist than the king. They always take a more extreme position on policy than the US does, on the kind of policies the US follows, precisely because they believe that way they gain influence in Washington. I don't think it impresses anybody in Washington, actually, but I think that is a large part of what we're seeing now.
And finally, how do you think China views this? Do you think they also kind of discard this as outright ridiculous? Or do they take this very seriously, and do you think this may hamper any future trade negotiations or trade relations with the UK, as outside of the EU, especially them being outside of the EU?
Right. Right. The answer is I don't think the Chinese take it very seriously, because I don't think they see Britain as an important military challenger or a military threat. But that doesn't mean they're not going to be very annoyed about it. I think they're going to be very annoyed about it, and it is going to affect Britain's commercial relationship with China, which is an important one for Britain, because the Chinese never take these things easily. There will be an inflammation in China of anti-British sentiment as a result of all of this. And of course, that will get much, much greater if Gavin Williamson has his way and really does send units of the British fleet into the South China Sea. I mean, the United States has the power and the weight to play these games. Britain doesn't, and it's very foolish of the British to get themselves involved in this sort of thing. We've talked about how unwise it's been for Canada to do this. It's equally unwise, perhaps more unwise for Britain.
Yeah, but it looks like they're pushing forward to do it.
Well, indeed. I mean, exactly. I mean, unless there's a change of government in Britain, which is a greater prospect, I should say, than it is in Canada at the moment. Or so it seems to me.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on that notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Also, go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran in the description box down below. You'll find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Please donate to the Duran. That really helps us out a lot. And you can get a copy of this video on SoundCloud and iTunes in audio format. So follow us there, subscribe there. And of course, go to theduran.com and read all the articles that Alexander links up to every day. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Remember, subscribe down below. Thank you very much. Take care.